Stephanie's Friday escape, she drugs Owen, ties him up and runs, but is someone else waiting to deep dive. Stop. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. Because this Friday's episode of Days of Our Lives on Peacock is about to deliver one of the most satisfying, pulse-pounding escape sequences we have seen from this show in years. And I don't say that lightly. I've been watching Salem drama unfold for a long time. And what Stephanie Johnson pulls off this Friday, it genuinely made me stand up from my couch and cheer out loud. She drugs Owen Kent, ties him to a chair, and runs. I know, but here's the thing, and this is why we're doing a full deep dive today instead of just a 2-minute recap. The escape itself is only about 30% of the story. The real question, the one that's going to keep you awake Friday night, is this. Is Owen working alone? Because every single clue the show has been dropping suggests there is a second accomplice lurking in the shadows, and if Stephanie runs straight into that person's arms after getting away from Owen, that's not an escape. That's a trap inside a trap. Welcome back, everyone. Let's tear this apart. Part 1, the escape, what we know and why it's brilliant. So here's what's going down on Friday. Stephanie has been held captive by Owen Kent, a man with a documented history of obsession toward her going back to Liangqianlingjiu. At some point during her captivity, Stephanie manages to get her hands on some kind of sedative. She plays it smart. She plays it cold. She lures Owen close enough, administers the drug, waits for him to go under, and then ties him to a chair before making a run for it. Can we just appreciate how absolutely badass that is for a second? Because look, Salem, women getting kidnapped and sitting around crying while waiting to be rescued is practically a soap opera tradition at this point. It's practically a genre requirement. So when the show actually gives Stephanie agency, gives her a plan, gives her the intellectual and emotional fortitude to outmaneuver her captor, rather than just scream until Steve or Alex shows up, that matters. That is a choice the writers made deliberately, and I respect it enormously. But here's what's nagging at me. Those rope bindings in the preview footage, incredibly loose, like hilariously loose. I get that it's television and actors can't actually be immobilized, but when your captive escape plan hinges on restraints that look like they were tied by a 6-year-old at summer camp, you have to wonder, did Stephanie actually secure him well enough to buy herself real time, or is Owen going to shake those off within 5 minutes of the sedative wearing off? The drug is the key variable here. How potent was it? How long does she have? Every second of that escape clock matters. Part 2, the history, because Owen and Stephanie have been here before. Let's go back. Because you cannot fully understand what's happening this Friday without understanding 2009. Owen Kent wasn't just some random creep who fixated on Stephanie. He was deeply embedded in the Demera organization, working as a gardener for the Kyriakis family as cover while feeding intelligence back to EJ and Stefano. When EJ ordered him to take action, Owen kidnapped Stephanie and held her in a hospital morgue. A morgue. He hid her in a body drawer. The psychological terror of that alone is almost impossible to overstate. And here's what's important about that original storyline that most casual fans might have forgotten. Owen's obsession with Stephanie wasn't purely professional. It was personal. He became genuinely attached to her during the kidnapping in that deeply disturbed way that only the most dangerous captors do. He wasn't just executing orders. He wanted her. He wanted to be her protector, her world, her everything in his completely warped version of what that means. Philip, he's Steve. And eventually the combined force of several Salem heroes took him down. He was arrested, prosecuted, and sent away. So here we are, 16 years later in Showtime, and this man has come back He has rebuilt himself. He has a son now, which is how he was exposed when Sarah noticed the cut on his hand at the ER. He has constructed an entire life around himself. And yet, the obsession with Stephanie is still there, dormant but never dead. That's not just a plot device. That's a psychological portrait of a very specific and very real type of dangerous fixation. The show is actually saying something meaningful here, even if it sometimes wraps it in soap opera packaging. Part 3, the accomplice theory, and why I'm convinced Owen isn't alone, okay? This is where I need you to really pay attention, because I think this is the piece most people are missing. The comments on the day's social pages have been buzzing about Owen's guilt, Owen's motives, Owen's history, but almost nobody is seriously asking who else is involved. Think about the logistics of this operation for a moment. Owen is a single father. He has a job. He has a son who was recently at the ER. He is not a criminal mastermind with unlimited resources. He's a damaged, obsessive man who has been nursing a fixation for a decade and a half, staging and maintaining a kidnapping of this complexity in a location that has stumped the Salem PD for this long. Requires more than one person. The show has been dropping breadcrumbs. The location where Stephanie is being held, someone pointed out there was an oxygen tank visible in the background of her captivity scenes, suggesting a more medically equipped space than just a random basement. That kind of setup takes planning and resources beyond what Owen alone could arrange. Someone helped him, someone is providing infrastructure. But here's the kicker: who benefits from Stephanie being removed from the equation? Let's think about that carefully. Stephanie is connected to Alex Kyriakis. She's connected to the Johnson family, which means she's connected to the Black Patch operation and by extension to the ISA. She has been involved in business dealings that touch on both Kyriakis and Demera territory. Any one of those connections could make her a target for someone operating in the background. My theory: the accomplice isn't someone we'd immediately think of as a villain. It's someone closer to the existing cast. Someone whose involvement would constitute a genuine plot twist, not just a hired hand. But a person with a personal stake in what happens to Stephanie. Jeremy Horton is still sitting in that weird, ambiguous space where the show cleared him of being the stalker, but hasn't fully absolved him of something. His behavior around Stephanie and Alex has been off. His reaction to events has been slightly too convenient. I'm not ready to let him off the hook entirely. Not yet. Part 4, Stephanie Johnson, legacy character, and why she deserves better than perpetual victimhood. Let me get on my soapbox for a minute here, pun intended. Stephanie Johnson is a legacy character in the truest sense. She is the daughter of Steve Patch Johnson and Kayla Brady, two of the most iconic characters in soap opera history. Two people who have survived literal torture, espionage, disease, and every conceivable horror Salem could throw at them. Stephanie carries that DNA, that history, and yet how often has the show let her be that legacy? The fan comments I've been reading are genuinely divided on. Some people love seeing Stephanie in danger because it activates Steve and Kayla, which is always appointment television. Fair point. But there's another group, and I'm in this group, who feel that Stephanie consistently gets defined by the men around her rather than by herself. She's Alex's love interest. She's Steve's daughter who needs rescuing. She's the woman Jeremy had complicated feelings for. This Friday's episode, if the writers play it right, is a chance to change that narrative permanently. If Stephanie escapes Owen through her own intelligence and resourcefulness, not because Alex found her in time, not because Steve's ISA connections tracked the location, but because she outmaneuvered a trained operative that is a character-defining moment, That is the show finally honoring what she should be. The drug play, especially, that requires planning. That requires keeping your fear internal while projecting a false sense of helplessness to your captor. That is advanced psychological strategy. Stephanie figured out Owen's weakness, his need to feel in control, his need to believe she was broken, and she weaponized it. That's not a victim. That's a survivor who became a strategist. Part 5, the real danger, what happens after the escape. And you won't believe what I think happens next. Stephanie runs. She gets out of wherever Owen has been holding her. She's disoriented, probably physically exhausted, possibly in an unfamiliar location. She doesn't immediately know whether Owen is still unconscious or whether those criminally loose ropes held. She's running on pure adrenaline, and that is the exact moment she is most vulnerable. Because if there is a second accomplice, and I genuinely believe there is, they won't be in the room with Owen. They'll be outside, watching the exits, positioned precisely for the scenario where Owen fails and Stephanie somehow gets loose. This is a classic two-layer trap structure. And Days has used it before. Remember when characters escaped one danger in Salem only to walk directly into another? The show understands that the most devastating cliffhangers aren't the ones where the threat is obvious. They're the ones where the character and the audience thinks they're safe for exactly one glorious, hopeful moment before everything collapses again. I think Friday ends with Stephanie almost free. Maybe she gets outside, maybe she sees daylight, or a road, or another person, maybe she even calls out for help. And then something goes wrong. Cut to black, credits roll. That's the cliffhanger. That's the Salem special. Part 6, Alex and Steve, the race against time and what it means for the love triangle. Let's be real for a second about Alex Kyriakis. I like Alex. I do. But his entire romantic arc with Stephanie has been built on him being the guy who shows up, the protector, the rescuer, and while that's romantic in a certain context, it also means Stephanie's storyline keeps getting filtered through his heroism rather than her own. Steve, on the other hand, is operating on a completely different level. The man has dealt with Owen Kent before. He knows exactly what this person's capable of. And unlike Alex, who brings passion and physical presence, Steve brings tactical precision and historical knowledge of Owen's psychology. If both of them are converging on Stephanie's location while she's executing her escape, the ideal scenario for her character is this. She gets herself out before either of them arrives. She rescues herself, and then Steve and Alex show up to deal with